98% originates from one statistic that only 2% of collegiate athletes go pro. Then it hit me. What happened to the other 98%? This platform will be sharing amazing stories from former collegiate and pro athletes who are navigating life after sports. We are here to celebrate their journey and share experiences to encourage and inspire. You never know who will hear your story. Welcome to 98%. Hey everyone, this is Daphne, founder and host of 98%. On today's episode, I have Shayna Yon. She ran track at LSU. She has a bachelor's in kinesiology and a master's at the University of New Orleans in healthcare management. Is that correct? Okay, nice. And you're from Denver, Colorado.
I am.
So, Shayna, you did run track, but you started off doing gymnastics. So what motivated you to start running track?
Yeah, so I had been doing gymnastics since I was probably like 6 or 7. And I liked the sport, but I was kind of getting like awkwardly tall and it just wasn't really working out anymore. And one of like my good friends, she was like, oh, like let's try out for the track team. And I was like, I do not like running. Like it's not a good idea. But I'll come with you for moral support. And I ended up trying out just so we could make a memory out of it. And I ended up making the team, but I started off as a hurdler, which is kind of weird because I'm not very coordinated. But from there, I started doing like the 200. I was able to run on JV because I was still kind of transitioning out of gymnastics. So I was kind of like still in season for gymnastics while track was starting. So I was able to transition out of gymnastics and finish. I think I ran maybe 2 or 3 meets varsity, but I was able to like kind of find my niche on accident. I started to take it more seriously towards the end of the high school season, and I found a club team that I liked, like that was based in Denver. And then from there, I just was like set on, how far can I go in this sport, and just becoming like a student of like my actual events and like learning more about how the track world works.
So what events did you realize you were really good at?
Yeah, so I ran the 100, the 200, and long jump. And long jump was always a really fun event for me because I would never know what leg I was gonna jump off of. I was just like, okay, whatever one just hits the board is what we're gonna go with. But that was like my really fun event, and the 100 and the 60 were like my ones that I really focused on because I loved how technical it could be, and you could never really you could practice it, but like the more you fine tune it, the more like you'll see the difference in everything. So I like how much you have to pay attention to detail in it, and just like how intense it is like within the race of like how even if you work on your blocks for this amount of time, like even it'll make like hundredths of a second like difference.
That's so true. And I struggled. I was speed endurance, but not speed. And I was just like tall. We're both tall, but I could not get myself out of the blocks fast enough. I'd be the last one left in the blocks. But I love that you long jump because they always try to get the 100, 60, 200 sprinters into long jump, but I hated sand so much. So when you joined the club team, what was that team dynamic like?
Oh, we were like extremely close. Like we had like 3 quarter milers, we had 2 hurdlers, and I was the only one who did like strictly short sprints. But then like the quarter milers would also run the 200, and then our hurdler would also do the 200 from time to time. So we all basically trained together, with the exception of like our technical days would kind of like vary. But we all would, within our technical days, like we would go over our race plans and like our rhythms, and we would all kind of like critique and help each other like fine tune things. So it was more of like a collective effort.
Yeah.
And it was always like, we want you to do well. Like we were always encouraging each other, like, hey, like we're all trying to go to New Balance National. Like we're all trying to go to New York so we can like go as a team. And it was always like a collective, like cohesive, like effort.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of teams weren't like that, especially a lot of teams are kind of bigger, but ours was probably, I'd say maybe 9 at the most. And I liked it like that because it was, we had more time with like the coach and she could critique us and like we could have videos and everything. So it was a lot more like intimate. And that was something that I was also looking for when I went to college. Like I was looking for like very like nurturing environment because we clearly thrived in that environment.
Yeah.
And that was also something that was like really big in the things I was looking for when I was taking my visits.
You were taking your visits, and you were the first athlete in your family, right? To
go to a Power 5 school.
To Power 5 school. So you ended up. So actually, before I ask you that question, you ended up, since you were the first, how was that recruiting experience like? What advice do you have for people who have never experienced the recruiting phase and being the first in their family? Because I was the first in my family. My family are there Nigerians, and I'm the first American in my family and the first one to be an athlete. And so I remember going through that recruiting phase. It was unheard of. It was very like difficult. My parents didn't know what to do. They were just like, oh, so people get paid to go to school to do this. And so what advice do you have for athletes who are going through and parents who are going through this for the first time?
Yeah, I think my advice would be to write down a list of things that really are important to you from like an academic side and from a athletic side, but also in what areas really helped you thrive in your high school environment and how can you look for those types of things or create that same type of environment based on the school that you're looking at. I would say as far as parents, like my parents came on all my visits with me, so I also had like their perspective, their set of eyes on things that I necessarily wasn't like paying attention to. Because I was like, hey, I'm trying to meet the team. I'm trying to like see how college is and just kind of like soak up everything. But even if it's not your parents, like bring your coach or bring someone that you know has your best interests at heart and can ask like those questions that you wouldn't necessarily think about, especially like with the coaches. You have like the coaches meetings. You meet with the academic advisors. Make sure you look at the majors that they offer and see, even if they have 2 majors that you're considering, like that's still good because once you get into a program, you might not like it. So just kind of like don't put all your stake in the athletic side. Like you still want to enjoy the academic side. And once you get to school, I would recommend that you have friends outside of your sport because that really helped me as well, kind of separate, if I wasn't having a good meet or a good practice.
Yeah.
I always look forward to hanging out with my friends from class because I was like, they're going to take my mind off of it. And even just like offer different perspectives because, I mean, if you're an athlete on campus, you're like, oh, like you have it made and all that. And like, no, not necessarily, but even just to hear a refreshing perspective, like, no, like you get to run for the school, like that's so amazing. Like those type of moments always like encouraged me when I wasn't necessarily like, oh, I just need a break from practice from like teammates or just like it's healthy to have a separation from like practice, especially when you're in season.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that you said that were so important because only 15% of high school athletes end up going to play college sports. And so I don't think we realize that this talent that we have is so significant and only a few of us can actually go and represent a university
Yeah.
or even the United States or our respective countries. And yeah, to like the regular student, what we're doing is so amazing and so magnificent. And I think that's something
Yeah.
that we also too should, you know, hold ourselves high, despite how our experience, our athletic experience turned out.
Yes.
And so I really love that. And then you ended up going to a Power Five school, and we talked about, you know, how cohesive your club team was out of high school. So you ended up going to LSU, and I know there's a lot of egos. You
Yeah.
know, I wanted to go to LSU at one point, and then I decided to not. And so and just seeing the caliber of sprinters specifically, because it's a sprint heavy school, everybody's the top of something from somewhere, you know? So how was that experience like, dealing with a team with a lot of egos?
Yeah, so it was a huge culture shock. Like you said before, I'm from Denver, Colorado, and I'm going like to the complete south. So everything that I knew was so different, from like accents and food and weather and like humidity. I never really had been in humidity, like being at sea level and like training and stuff. It was a lot of different adjustments. And when I got to school, I came from my club team was basically a sister team to a well-known track coach named Tony Wells. So we adapted a lot of training, I guess secrets, I would say, within the track world based on like my high school training. So it wasn't like the normal like conventional training that I guess that was outside of Colorado. I know Oregon does some of his training.
Yeah.
But it was I came into college thinking that like, oh, like my experience of a cohesive team was what I had in Colorado. But when I came to LSU, it was almost like like every man for himself. Like, I'm here to be a national champion, in my event. Like, literally every woman that I was training beside was like state champion, 2-time state champion. You top 10 in the U.S. Like won New Balance Nationals, made a U.S. team, like U.S. or Youth World Team, or any, like they had all these accolades. So we were all essentially kind of like leveled playing field, but it almost kind of felt like, you know, an analogy like crabs in a bucket, like when they're trying to get
Oh,
out
yeah,
and
yeah,
trying to
yeah.
like
Get
pull
it,
each
get
other
off the
down.
top.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I came from a team where it was like, hey, like if I am struggling in something, like I'm gonna find someone who has that's my weakness is their strength. So like I'm gonna like go alongside them and make my weakness like a strength as well, and like kind of like help each other basically become better athletes. But when I got to LSU, I felt like a lot of like intimidation, when and that was very like confusing to me because I'm like, we're all on the team to, you know, we have one common goal. So if you know, my training and your training is the same, like we should be wanting each other to, you know, go 1 and 2, or we should want everybody to succeed. But it wasn't necessarily like that. It was more so like, this is my time to shine. Like I waited X amount of years for this. So it was more like a seniority type, I guess, mindset.
Yeah.
So that was like very strange to me. And I also was a jumper at LSU, so I primarily trained with the jumpers, and then I would do blocks and have certain sprint days with the sprinters. But the way that the social aspect of like our team was, it was very like segregated. So like sprinters were just with the sprinters, jumpers were just with the jumpers. But I also lived with 2 sprinters, and then my other roommate was Kayla, and she was a jumper as well. So like we hung out within our apartment, but we didn't really necessarily carry that out as much as I would want it to, like, you know, outside of our apartment, like we would all go out as a team, but it was more so like after a track meet or something,
Yeah.
or go out to eat, or you know, it was more of like a social from a bigger picture, not more like intimate.
Yeah.
So that was very hard for me to like wrap my head around, and I would call my coach and be like, "Oh my gosh, like this is not how like what I'm used to. Like, what do I do? Like, how do I, you know, try and how do I try and like bring the team together? Like, I feel like this is bigger than me. Like, I can't do it on my own."
Yeah.
So one of the sprinters had invited me to my sophomore year, had invited me to FCA, and she was like, "I'll buy you ice cream after, like just come." And I was just like, "Okay, like free ice cream, cool, like that sounds like a plan." And like I never been around like, I guess I would say like a group of athletes that like love Jesus. Like that was just like a foreign, I guess, like thought to me, because I never really thought to like bring them together.
Yeah.
And like I vividly remember like the message that night was like building your, what is your foundation built on? Like as athletes, we, you know, our foundation is built on like being a pro athlete, or be like becoming an Olympian, or like what have you put on a pedestal that's like not the Lord. And I
Yeah.
was just like, wow, like that's so crazy. I never thought about it like that. And that kind of like segued me to becoming involved in FCA and kind of growing my community with like Christian believers, and how like I could, as a believer myself, like um, how can my position on my team like help, you know, bring God glory, but also like how can I love my teammates well? Like how can I be the best teammate that I can be, not necessarily thinking about it from like a performance standpoint, but like
Yeah.
as a person, like how can I lead my team well, whether that's in practice or just like being kind, or offering to help them in something. Like how can I not let their actions like dictate how I treat them,
Yeah.
and also how can I create a different culture on the team, that'll translate to the track, because ultimately like
Yeah.
we all want to be on the same page, we all want to have success. But for me personally, it was like me taking a step back and realizing I had to become like the teammate that I wanted to have in return.
Yeah, and I think like earlier you had spoken about um, being or connecting or networking with people that are outside of, you know, your sport or just athletics, you know, because you get to experience a different world outside of what you're used to and what you're comfortable in. And so you joining FCA and kind of finding a reason or even an understanding of how can I bring this culture into my team. And I know that God is a huge proponent in your life, in your relationship with God. And how did FCA help you channel your purpose onto the track team? How were you able to change that culture?
Yeah, so my sophomore year, and she's still one of my like best friends today, Britley. Um, I don't even remember how we started like talking. It might have been like, "Hey, do you want to get some food after practice or something?" And I ended up going to church with her that next Sunday, and we kind of started like this carpool, like, "Hey, whoever wants to go to church, like I'm driving," or sometimes she would drive, and we would try and like go eat afterwards. So kind of create um, like a routine of like, hey, we're all gonna like go to church, eat, and then like, you know, if somebody needs to go grocery shopping, if like the freshmen or something, like if you guys need groceries or whatever, like we can do that. Um, but through that, I was able to, I would say, not take track so seriously, because
Yeah.
I mean, for me personally, I was like, I have to do this, I'm not on the right track, I need to be at this certain like point in my collegiate career to like ultimately be at this step. It was always like kind of like a comparison. But what I found, like the more that I surrounded myself with, the more that I was able to separate myself and like really hone in on like who God wanted me to be in this like season of my life, like things start to flow easier like on the track. So my junior year was like my best season, I would say, as far as like progression. And I was just like, you know what, like I worked hard. I know that um, like I'm gonna do what I can to be of service to my teammates. Like I'm gonna like pull certain people like, hey, like go with me so you, like I could work on my start and vice versa. But like mainly believing in like my ability through like being a believer. Like God put me on this campus, like he put all these people in my life, you know, like I want them to see I'm persevering. Like I may not be running the times that I want, but I still believe that I can be this athlete that I know that I can be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it always seemed like whenever I would get like right on a roll, like something would happen. So like my junior year, I think I had like hurt my hamstring or something, or I had got sick. So I wasn't able to compete. And then my next year, my senior year, I was like going in like really great shape, and I hurt my ankle. And even through that, I was like taking so many classes, and I had exams every single week that whole semester. But even then, I was like, okay, I may not be able to physically help and support my team, but I can be like their best cheerleader. Like I can send them like good luck messages and like a scripture and let them know like I'm praying for them.
Yeah.
And like as a senior and like working super hard and wanting to see like all your work kind of like come together, it was like super hard trying to balance your expectations based on like what you knew you were capable of doing,
Mm-hmm.
but also like putting that aside and allowing your like really how you, honestly like your true heart behind your teammates like come out like, no, I'm gonna like be y'all's best cheerleader. Like it, things
Yeah.
aren't going well for me athletically, but like thank God for my community because like they kept me grounded. Like I was able to um go on a like college athlete retreat during the time that I was supposed to be running indoor. Like I was able to get like baptized and just have like an amazing experience. And through that, I was like, you just like filled with so much joy that I could like outpour into my teammates and like help
Yeah.
them out. And I thought that was just like super cool because um, a lot of people may not think, or like from the outside looking in, they may not think that I had a successful career, but like my memories, like I guess as an athlete, are still very great. Like I had met like some amazing people that I like love dearly, but like the core memories that I have from my experience at LSU are like getting baptized, like going to college athlete retreat, like trying to figure out how we're gonna fit like 5 to 10 people in my car to go to church. So just like even having those
Yeah.
moments of like um, being a light essentially is like
Yeah.
um,
So you would consider your time at LSU successful?
yeah, I would say it was very successful because I I have something I have something tangible like to take away. Like I
Yeah.
have not only do I have a degree, but I have like lifelong friendships. Like I have um, so many connections that I made that have helped me also make connections here. And that's really what like college is about, is just like making connections and like making memories. And not to say that I didn't enjoy my college experience, because I did, but I truly believe that I didn't go to LSU for athletics, like for track to be successful. Like that is coming later on because I'm still like competing and training.
Yeah, you're still,
But
yeah.
it was for me to serve my teammates basically.
So what are you getting out of, or how are you approaching athleticism now? Like now that you're still competing,
Hmm.
outside of the NCAA, what is
Yes.
that mindset like?
It's completely different. Like I feel like I'm learning so much about like my true why behind the sport now that you don't have like a scholarship like oh you have to go to class and all these other things that allow you to be able to compete. Like no, like you have to like sign up for meet yourself, you have
Mhm.
to take care of your body, you have to plan out. Like I work full time as well, so working full time then going straight to practice, like becoming more disciplined but also remembering like the the goals that I have set out for myself are great, but I still need to find ways to um serve my coach. Like serving like never stops. Like how
Yeah.
can I um how can I help like the high schoolers that I also work with, and even in my job, like I nanny right now. So like everything is ministry. Like my job is ministry, like serving at church is ministry, like what I do on the track is ministry. So just like inviting God into those spaces so that I don't feel like I am working so hard for like outside approval or like outside success, like what other people would consider success. Like I feel like I am on the path to becoming more successful as an athlete, but
Yeah.
like my growth as a person has like grown exponentially, and I'd rather um learn these lessons and grow as a person along the way, so when I do get there I can steward like what God has for me the right way, essentially.
I love your perspective on all of this because I think it took me a long time to really even understand why God allowed me to go to UCLA and get a full ride and then to
Hmm.
never compete.
Yeah.
So, but I was still able to maintain a full scholarship even though um I really didn't live up to what they brought me on to the school to
Hmm.
do. And I honestly didn't really understand what UCLA's purpose was for me until
Hmm.
like 3 years after I graduated and I was kicking
Yeah.
rocks
Yeah.
and upset about the whole thing. And I think to this day, I still ask God, like, why? Like,
Hmm.
why did you allow me to go this far and then to
Hmm.
not amount to anything? And in the end of the day, God wants to bring you through some things to show you what your purpose is
Hmm.
in all of it. And so I just want to thank you for sharing your perspective on that because I think it's a blessing to really understand that
Hmm.
early
Yeah.
rather than later. And then now you're able to compete professionally and have a different mindset about it that
Hmm.
um, it's important to have community
Hmm.
and to expand your network and really allow God to just take control rather than
Hmm.
trying to take control of things yourself.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you sharing that perspective. I really
Yeah.
do. One last question. What are the disciplines and lessons you learned during your college experience that you carry with you today?
Um, I would say not to don't mentally take yourself out the game when you feel like you've had disappointments, because it can be easy to um, constantly remind yourself of where you think you should be. But as long as you remember your purpose and the goal that you're trying to achieve, like say that you're like sore one day and you're like, oh, I can't practice the way I want to. As long as you remember, like, I'm not going to be sore in a week, and like I still have all that matters is today, and giving 100% and controlling what I can control in this moment, like you'll be able to show up as like your best self, like
Yeah.
every single day, as long as you focus on the things that you can't control. So that's something that I've taken away, and I still have to remind myself. of is control what you can control, and inviting community, like finding outside community um, that can share perspective, but also tell you like the truth when you don't want to hear it. Um, being open to change, because like college is gonna throw you curveballs, whether that's academically, socially,
Yep.
like anything can happen. But um, as long as you're able to learn how to pivot and kind of roll with the punches sometimes, um, you're gonna like land back on your feet.
Yeah.
And lastly, I would say it's okay if life takes you in a different direction, because like that's ultimately going to prepare you for whatever God has for you in your next season.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing your story and gems about community and perspective and purpose. I really love this perspective that you brought onto the show, and I know that it will inspire someone's life that is going through something similar. So thank you so much, Shayna, for being on the episode. Of course.
And just even sharing like your story and creating a space for current past athletes, like even athletes that are trying to, get to run in college, like being able to give them, first of all, a place where they can come and learn beforehand, but also creating a space for former athletes to speak, because I know a lot of like former athletes, they become so attached to their sport. It's so hard to kind of like differentiate or how to enter the real world. So for you to be able to give them a voice and continue to have a voice is like very big, and I appreciate you and your boldness in creating this platform for them.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.